Welcome to Story Power, a bi monthly podcast where my guests and I chat about stories and creativity in all different styles and formats. My name is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden, and my goal is to promote what Dale Carnegie stated in his famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He said, instead of condemning people, let's try to understand them. Let's try to figure out why they do what they do. That's a lot more profitable and intriguing than criticism, and it breeds sympathy, tolerance, and kindness. To know all is to forgive all. It's my firm belief that the goal of most creative people is to try to understand themselves and others. That's what makes artwork of all kinds so compelling. But more than that, the personal stories of my guests promote understanding as well. Roger C. Schenck, a cognitive scientist, said, human beings are not ideally set up to understand logic. They are ideally set up to understand stories. It's my hope that Story Power will help us understand each other better by sharing the stories of my guests. Hello, Story Power listeners. This is the last episode for the year 2024. It is episode 116. This is going to be a little bit different episode than I normally have. It's going to be in 3 segments, and it's all about movies. I love stories of all kinds, and if you have been a listener for a long time, you know that I have a lot of writers who are my guests. I have other creative people as well, and some of them are movie makers. I happen to be someone who absolutely loves movies. They were the first stories that I really started to analyze, and then later I became an avid reader. So today I am going to have 3 segments. The first one, I was privileged to be a guest on a podcast called Natey Katy at the Movies. And I talked with mostly Nate about a movie that I absolutely love, and that's Casablanca. And he and I not only analyzed the movie, but I gave some background about how the movie was made and what was happening when they were making it. So I hope you enjoyed that little segment. And I also hope that you will go and check out Natey Katy at the Movies, because usually what they do is they pick one movie per episode to talk about. And it's mostly just, do Nate and Katy really like the movie, or was it just sort of or was it a downer movie and they didn't like it? But I think it's fun to listen to other people talk about movies, so go check them out. The second segment is me suggesting 3 classic Christmas movies that are probably not very well known unless you happen to be an avid Turner Classic Movies viewer. But since Hallmark sort of has the market on Christmas movies, I wanted to give an alternative for those people who might not really like Hallmark movies all that much, especially the Christmas movies. And so these 3 movies are ones that I have seen and really liked and would like to see again over and over, because they have great messages or they're just fun. They're just fun movies. The third segment is a conversation that I had with my sister. It's the intro to our new YouTube channel that we are starting in 2025 called Classic Cinema with the Sage Sisters. And we just talk about why we want to create this YouTube channel. It's going to be the intro to the YouTube channel. And we hope that you will go find us and check us out in the new year. I will be placing the link for that YouTube channel in some of my early 2025 Story Power episodes. So here I am with Nate on Natey Katy at the Movies.
Watch the screen and give a review. Natey and Katy, it's what they do. Opinions fly, but they're not me. They're the critics on the scene.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Natey and Katy at the Movies. I'm your host, Nathan, aka Natey, of course. And on today's episode, Katy decided to flake again. I don't know what's up with her. Sometimes she decides to come on, and I should just change the show to be called Natey and sometimes Katy at the Movies, because that's what it's starting to feel like. But not to fear, my friends, it's not just me on this episode. I did promise a special guest, and that's exactly what we have. So, special guest, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hello, my name is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden, and I'm a former theater instructor and movie lover, and I'll let you introduce the movie we're talking about today.
Awesome. Yeah, I've met Lucinda through podmatch.com, which I kind of shamelessly plugged last episode. It's actually been really beneficial for us because we've been able to find some really cool guests to come on and add a little bit more depth to what Katy and I usually do. So today's episode is a classic. And when I say a classic, I mean like one of those quintessential classic movies, and that is Casablanca. I remember watching this before, but I don't think I've ever watched it all the way through, which is crazy because I am a fan of the classics. But before we can get into our likes and dislikes, I got to go over the synopsis. A cynical expatriate, American cafe owner, struggles to decide whether or not to help his former lover and her fugitive husband escape the Nazis in French Morocco. Casablanca stars Humphrey Bogart, Ingrid Bergman, Paul Heinried, and Claude Rains. This is just from the acting, from the actors, from the cast, from the story, from the feel, from just everything about this film just screams classic film. So, Lucinda, I'm going to let you just dive into your thoughts about this film because I remember I sent you our list as I do with all our guests. And this was like the number one movie that you wanted to talk about because you said, I believe you used it in a course that you taught before. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm.
What was the course about that you used this for?
Oh, well, it was called Dramatic Structure, and which is a really boring name for a course that just means it's how plays and movies, because they're basically the same thing except extra visuals in movies. But the screenplays are basically the same, and it's how it's structured and how does it get the theme across or themes. The best stories have multiple themes, and this is one of those, has multiple themes. So it was one that I showed in that class, and I had mostly students under 30 or around 30, 18 to 30-ish, and they really loved it. They loved it. So, and that it's always at the top of almost all the lists, like 1, 2, 3 at the top of the lists, movie lists.
Yeah, this is high up on our IMDb top 250 movies of all time, which is what Katy and I have been using this entire season. And like you said, this movie is just, I mean, I can't say enough about it because it's just, like I said before, it's the quintessential classic. I mean, you got Humphrey Bogart, who was just known at that time as like the leading man, and Ingrid Bergman. I mean, just classic beauty, classic just presence in every scene that she's in, and the storyline.
Mhm.
I mean, there's some twists and turns. Like I remember when I watched it the first time, I didn't realize. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. That she was actually married to Victor Laszlo. And yes, we will get into some spoilers because this movie has been around for ages. So if you don't really know about it, I do recommend watching it. And we'll get into our ratings a little later in the episode. But already, I mean, I just think this is perfect cinema. But the storyline is just so compelling. So what were some of the themes that you touched on with your students?
Well, it has that whole good versus evil thing with the Nazis and everybody else against them, except for Claude Rains, who is sort of the comic character. He's, blows with the wind. Whatever, he even says that. Whatever wind is blowing, I just go with it. So it's that. And Victor Laszlo is the head of this international group of resistance groups. In fact, he's probably the one who created them even before the Nazis took over Poland, invaded Poland. He could probably see it coming, and so he went around Europe and started all these cells of resistance movements. And so he's a really important character. Paul Henry plays him. And then there are all of the people who are trying to escape the Nazis, and we get to see a couple of those stories a little bit. But the heart of the story of the play and movie is the triangle of Rick, Ilsa, and Victor, with a little bit of Claude Rains stuck in there. He plays the prefect of police in the town, so he's not a military guy necessarily. He's police. So that's a little bit different but he does try to cater to the Nazis once they show up. And some of the things that are really interesting about this, it's sort of a lightning in a bottle kind of a movie because they didn't have a finished script when they started filming. I found out from reading Internet Movie Database that the Pearl Harbor was on the 7th of December, 1941, and the very next day, somebody from Warner's had known about this unproduced play called Everybody Goes to Rick's or something like that is the name of the play. And they bought the rights to it the very next day, December 8th. Or at least they read it to buy the rights for it the very next day. So they started filming shortly after Pearl Harbor. And so it didn't come out, I don't think, until January of 43, but they were making it during 1942. It's kind of unclear in the movie whether or not the Americans have entered the war yet, but Rick is this disaffected, kind of doesn't really care about anybody else. He's just sort of walking through life. He's disconnected emotionally until Elsa walks through his door. And it's obvious right away to Victor that something has gone on between them because they know each other's names already. And another thing about the movie is that almost everybody in the movie was somebody who had escaped the Nazis. So that scene where they have the dueling national anthems, those are real tears in those people's eyes because they had escaped Nazi Germany. Even the Nazis were all people who had escaped Nazi Germany. And the man who plays Major Strasser was very famous in Germany. He was married to a Jew, and Hitler wanted him to do, propaganda films and stuff, and he refused. He was a definite anti-Nazi. And the resistance people found out that he and his wife were going to be assassinated, and they got him out of Germany. So he insisted always to play Germans because he wanted to show how horrible they were. So I have all these little really interesting backstories like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like I didn't know any of that, and it kind of goes back to when Katie and I did the Great Dictator, or the Dictator, the Great Dictator, with Charlie Chaplin, and how important that film was, because when he made that film, they were like smack dab in the middle of it, or at least it had just started the war with Germany. And to know that with all that backstory of all the actors in Casablanca, I mean, that was like smack dab in the middle of the war as well. And so the fact that they're making this movie knowing the backlash that they might get from the Nazis, Adolf Hitler, and just everything else is going around, like you said, Pearl Harbor, all this war that's surrounding this film, it's just, it makes me appreciate the film even more. and how important it is in the history of film, and why everyone should take the time to watch it, because it's just such an important piece of not just film history, but history in general. And so, yeah, I mean, that's awesome. All that information that you were able to give us. And one thing you talked about, to kind of go back to the film itself, with Humphrey Bogart's character Rick. It's kind of funny and ironic that he constantly says to, like, at least to the male characters, that he doesn't stick his neck out for anybody. But then at the same breath, he always sticks his neck out, it seems, for the female characters. Like the woman who comes up to him and asking for money or help with money to go to, I think they're trying to go to America too. And he goes to the poker table and he basically helps the guy win all this money.
Yeah.
And then the same thing with Elsa too. Like at the end, he helps her flee to America. And so I thought that was kind of funny. I was talking to my dad who loves the classics. He actually recommended the movie that I reviewed this past Saturday, Lifeboat by Alfred Hitchcock. And so he's really into those classic films. And so I was talking to him about that, and he found that really funny as well. But I think we have someone who's able to join us. I think she decided to actually show up. So let's see if she actually does. Katie, are you there?
I have something to say about Humphrey Bogart when she joins us.
Well, you can go ahead and share.
Well, this is Humphrey Bogart's very first starring role as a romantic lead. He always played bad guys or gangsters or, something like that. And so almost always. There's one movie that he did with Bette Davis where he was a good guy, but he was a secondary character in that movie. So this is the first time, and I think there was a quote of him saying, one of the first scenes that they did was with him and Ilsa in Paris in the flashback. And he's like, I have no idea how to do this, love stuff. And then, of course, a year or two later, he does the first of the 4 movies that he did with Lauren Bacall. So he became a romantic lead in this.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey, everybody. We have a brand new way that you can stay in contact and interact with us, Natey and Katy, and that is our fan mail. In the show notes, you'll see a link that says send us a text. That'll go right to our fan mail, and we'll be able to see what you have to say to us, whether it be questions, feedback, you name it, you can send it through fan mail. And who knows, maybe we'll give you a shout out on a future episode. So go ahead, send us some fan mail.
This movie.
Yeah, he does it. He does a great job with just the way he delivers his lines. Just, you can hear the pain in his voice. You can see the pain in his facial expressions. Another little, I guess, tidbit that I thought was really funny and somewhat weird at times. In the film, they read his dossier and they say that he's 37 years old. And so he's playing a 37-year-old. In real life, he's actually 43. And then Bergman in real life at the time was 27. And I don't know if her character is supposed to be 27 in the film, because there's a moment in one of the flashbacks where they're talking about where they were, like, why didn't I meet you 10 years ago or something like that?
Right.
He's like, so where were you 10 years ago? And she says, I was just getting my braces. And she says,
I was
where were
getting
you 10 years ago? I was out finding a job. So I'm like,
right. Yeah.
I mean, I guess the age gap back in that time, like, didn't really matter as much.
Yeah.
But it was kind of weird at times. So Katy, we're talking about Casablanca.
Oh,
Thanks for
hi.
joining us, by the way. I apologize when you listen to this episode later, you'll hear that I called you a flake.
I'm not just any flake. I'm a frosted flake, first of all.
So did you take the time to actually watch Casablanca?
I'm actually a flake of gold is what I am. Casablanca, I've heard of that movie.
So you didn't watch it?
You've got to watch it. Mhm. Yeah.
No, actually, I'm going to wait and listen to our episode and see if it's worthwhile. So, do I need to be prepared for some spoilers?
I mean, yes, because this movie's been around forever and a
Yes.
day.
I think we already said some. And I'm
Okay.
about to say some more.
Okay. Now, and listen, yeah, and our listeners know we do usually warn them. Actually, my best friend said she goes, I don't listen to your episodes until I've watched the movie. So yeah, maybe we'll
Ah,
have to think about putting our rating. You know, we put our rating out, so you can kind of see our rating ahead of time. But
yes.
I'm really excited. I did watch like about 20 minutes of it, and then realized I wasn't gonna be able to join y'all tonight, so I did not finish it. But I'm really excited to hear your review,
Mhm.
and I won't interrupt more. But it sounds like a good one, just based on the huge smiles that you guys can't see that are listening on these two faces. I think this means it was a good one.
It's one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, it's
I
great.
was going to say there are some other spoilers. Well, things behind the scenes. One is, and this is a structural thing, like I used to teach in dramatic structure. Rick is the main character because he's the one that changes. It's his story. So he's the one that grows and changes the most. But he and Ingrid Bergman were trying to figure out how they could get out of the movie because they thought the dialogue was so hokey and they thought it was going to be a flop. And then now, of all the movies that AFI, they rate the lines from movies. The Casablanca has the most lines that are quotable lines.
We typically do a quote at the end of our episode, but can you give me what you feel like are your most iconic? Again, I haven't seen the movies. I couldn't tell you any. What would be the most iconic that maybe the average person has heard referenced somewhere?
Oh, here's looking at you, kid. The whole play it again, Sam, is that they never say that.
No, they don't.
They do say play it, Sam, and they're talking about the song As Time Goes By. Uh, which became really iconic. Although it was a song that was already existing, but so they couldn't give it an Oscar or anything. But people loved that song. Another thing that's so great about the movie is that Paul Heinrich's character is really an emotionally intelligent kind of a guy because he is Ilsa's husband, but they haven't really been together very much because they got married, and only a few months later he got put into a concentration camp, and then he was there for a year. Then she thought he was dead. That's when she fell in love with Humphrey Bogart. Then the day that they were supposed to leave Paris together, she finds out her husband's alive. I mean, so it's like they haven't really had a chance to be married, but right, there's this really great conversation between the two men, Humphrey Bogart and Paul Henreid, and he says, "I know that you're in love with a woman, and it might surprise you to know that I know we're in love with the same woman, but since no one's to blame, I don't blame you. He knows that she probably fell in love with him when she thought he was dead. So it's like, what guy would do that? I mean, it shows how intelligent he was to set up all of these cells of resistance movements around Europe and why he's such a threat to the Nazis because he's really, really intelligent. So the
Yeah, it's
other
just
thing that I love about it is the connection between Ingrid Bergman and Humphrey Bogart. And they didn't really have an off screen relationship at all. It was all on screen. All that chemistry was on screen. So,
yeah, it was great. It was, and that was the part of the movie that I didn't remember the first time I watched it. I didn't remember that uh Elsa was actually married to Victor, and because
mm,
I didn't get the romance between Rick and her. That's why I'm glad we watched it for this list, because talking about the background, talking about the history of the
mm,
film, and then seeing it in the context of everything else that happens in the movie, it's just a
right.
great film. It really
Yeah.
is. The story is just so good. And the heartbreak at the end, even though you know it's coming, you already know because if you
Do I need
know,
to go? Do I need to go?
I mean, yes. I mean, if you don't want to
I don't
know
want
the
to know the
ending.
heartbreak at the end.
Well, I don't think of it as a heartbreak. And yeah, I'm gonna have to talk about that.
Guys,
Yeah, take your ear pods out. Yeah, because Ilsa says to him, "You've got to make the decision," and I think she says that to him because he's the one who was wounded, emotionally wounded. And so she lets him make that decision. But after he has that conversation with Paul Henreid, I mean, it's obvious that he really did admire him when he first meets him, but he admires him even more and realizes, oh, I have got to let her go with him because he really does love her, but he hasn't had time to put any real attention into their relationship because he's so busy fighting the Nazis. So he knows once the war is over that Paul Henreid's going to have time to actually show Ilsa how much he loves her and win her back again. So, and plus, Humphrey Bogart's going to go off and be a mercenary again, just like he was, two or three times before. So, another really interesting thing about the movie is the even the Germans don't know why he can't go back to the United States. And I read in the Internet Movie Database that the writers kept trying to figure out why can't he go back to the United States. And finally, they just said, you know what? We're not going to give a reason. We're just going to leave it like nobody knows why he can't go back. So yeah. And you were talking about the young woman who's a refugee, and he helps her husband win the money. Partly it's because Claude Rains, we haven't talked too much about him. If a beautiful woman, wants to get out of Casablanca and go to the United States, then if she has sex with him, he'll give her the pass to get out. And that's what he's going to do with this young woman. And Humphrey Bogart just can't let that happen because she's what, maybe 18 or 19 or something. It's like, hey, it's too icky for him,
which is funny because I'm pretty sure Ingrid Bergman's character is supposed to be pretty young too. Just the way they talk to each other in the flashback.
Yeah. Well, she's probably of age though.
Right.
21. She's older than 21. So she's considered to be an adult at that
So
time.
was there anything about Casablanca? I mean, we've already basically said that this is perfection when it comes to cinema, but was there anything that stuck out to you that maybe you didn't like about this movie?
The only thing that I don't like about it is I wish that Ingrid Bergman would have made the decision herself who to go with. But it was 1942 when they were making this movie. And, you got the Hays Code thing going on. And so, she had to go with her husband. And I think being an actor director, thinking back her motives, she realized that Rick needed to make the decision because he was the one who had been wounded. So
do you think if they, God forbid, made a remake of Casablanca today, do you think they may go with that route of her making the decision? Or do you think do you think out of classic purposes that they would just stick with the original idea?
They have thought about making remakes of it, and everybody goes, "Why?" So it never flies. It never flies. Yeah. And I don't know what they would do, but that's kind of part of the thing that's so great about it is once he knows she loves him, he can go off and do what he needs to do. Yeah. He's healed pretty much when he knows that she really still loves him.
And I like how they leave it open to, you don't know. I mean, yes, him and Louis, I guess he calls him Louis, but they walk off into the fog, and it's kind of left open to interpretation of what Rick is going to do. I know you said he's going to go off and be a mercenary as he was before, and it's one of those films that nowadays, because of the popularity of it, it probably would get a sequel, and they probably would continue the story of Rick, which
Mhm.
would be kind of interesting to
Mhm.
see what he goes and does, on,
Mhm.
on his own. But it's also one of those films that's like, you know what? It's perfect the way it is. It doesn't need anything continuing it. The story was told in a beautiful way, and so it's just great. And I know I didn't really offer that much to this episode, so that's why, again, it's great that you came on to give us those background information. I think we basically summarized our feelings about this film. So do you want to go ahead and give this movie a rating?
Well, I give it as many stars as it can get. Um, I mean, I think on the AFI list, it's always number two behind Citizen Kane on the overall list, and it's usually number one on the like romantic movie list.
I would put this above Citizen Kane. Katie and I also reviewed that as
I
well.
think so too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we reviewed that, and I'm pretty sure we gave it our lowest rating. One of our lowest ratings was for Citizen Kane. We gave it a 1 out of 6 because I just didn't understand the hype of that film. But when it comes to
Yeah.
Casablanca, like the acting, like I said, I mean everything I said before, it's just the
Yeah.
quintessential classic film, and you just can't,
Yeah.
you can't get any better than Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman. You just can't.
I know.
And
I
so
know.
I'm going to give it our 6 out of 6 stars just because of it's just sheer perfection. So Katie, if
Yeah.
you're still listening to this episode, go watch it so we can, I guess, talk about it, but just not record our conversation.
Yeah, really. Because I always love talking about movies. I don't care if I'm recording or not.
Well, Lucinda, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I know you have a podcast of your own, so go ahead and tell our listeners what the name of that show is, what it's about, and how people can find it.
Okay. My podcast is Story Hyphen Power. It's on all that, well, it's on Spotify, it's on YouTube, Apple, Amazon. I can't remember where Libsyn is where I produce it from. And it's also on my website, Sage Woman Chronicles on WordPress. So it's about 4.5 years old. I started it in July of 2020. And I talk to people about stories, about the stories they're creating. I talk to artists and musicians and all kinds of people, but mostly I'm talking either about their own personal stories or the ones that they're creating. And I'm going to put a plug in for my sister and I are going to start a new YouTube channel called Classic Cinema with the Sage Sisters in the new year. And we will do basically what you do, take one movie and analyze it.
That's awesome. Well, we'll obviously share your podcast in the show notes and on all of our social media. Thank you again for coming on the show. And speaking of stories, here is a little ear peek of what Katie and I, well, hopefully Katie and I, will be talking about next week on the show.
Your fame is well-deserved, Spaniard. I don't think there's ever been a gladiator to match you. As for this young man, he insists you are Hector reborn. Was it Hercules? Why doesn't the hero reveal himself and tell us all your real name? You do have a name.
My name is Gladiator.
How dare you show your back to me? Slave! You will remove your helmet and tell me your name.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix Legions, loyal servant to the true emperor, Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next.
I'm actually really excited because we're going to be talking about Gladiator, the famous epic Russell Crowe film, just a couple days before Gladiator 2 comes out. So I'm actually really excited about that because we're going to talk about Gladiator, and then obviously I'm going to go see Gladiator 2. So I'm already spoiling a future surprise Saturday episode. It's going to be Gladiator 2. because I love me some Denzel Washington and Pedro Pascal and gladiator fighting stuff. So can't wait for that. Lucinda, what is your favorite quote from Casablanca? Because we always end episodes with a quote. So besides, here's looking at you, kid, because we already said that one. Is there another famous quote that you like?
Wow. Yes, but it's Claude Rains when he's shutting down the Rick's place because he's been told to by the Nazis, and he says, "Why are you closing this down?" Rick says to him, and he goes, "Because I'm shocked to find out that there's gambling." And then the guy comes up and says, here's your winnings." That's my favorite part of the
Credits roll, lights go dim. Another journey taken in. Stories told through flickering frames. Natey and Katy know the names.
I hope you enjoyed that segment with my conversation with Nate about Casablanca. And I, again, hope you'll go check out their podcast because it is fun. It's really fun to hear them talk about movies. So now this segment is me giving you 3 classic Christmas movie suggestions. These are movies that are not on the most popular, most seen Christmas movie list. Some of those are It's a Wonderful Life, Miracle on 34th Street, Christmas in Connecticut, The Bishop's Wife, and there are others probably like any of the Christmas carols. But these 3 you don't really see very often, except for maybe on the Christmas movie marathon on Turner Classic Movies, which for this year starts on December 20th and goes, of course, to the 25th of December. So these 3 movies are all in that marathon. The first one is It Happened on Fifth Avenue. It's a 1947 movie. It's also available on Plex and Tubi, but it's going to be played on Turner Classic Movies on December 21st and December 24th. So if you have Turner Classic Movies, you can go maybe record it or set it to remind you to go watch the movie. The second one is The Man Who Came to Dinner. It's a 1941 movie. It will be on Turner Classic Movies on the 21st, or you can rent or buy it from Amazon, or it might be available at your local library as well, because it's kind of a famous movie. The third one is Remember the Night, 1940, and it will be on Turner Classic Movies on December 22nd. You can also watch that one on Plex if you have that available. So now let me tell you about each one. It Happened on Fifth Avenue. Here is the description from Internet Movie Database. 2 homeless men move into a mansion while its owner is wintering in the South. It stars Don DeFore, who is Jim, Victor Moore, who is Aloysius T. McKeever, and Gail Storm, who plays Trudy. And there are lots of really great classic actors in the movie as well. This movie I love because Victor Moore, who plays Aloysius, is a hobo, is what they would call a hobo. He travels from mansion to mansion, ones that have like security breaches, and he camps out. While he knows that he's staked out these mansions, he knows when the owners are going to be gone. And so this mansion that he is camping out during Christmas is one that he camps out almost every Christmas season or during the winter because he knows the owner's going to be gone down to Florida or South Carolina or someplace like that. And along the way, though, during this movie, he and Don DeFore kind of collect people who need a place to stay. It's 1940, it's still the Depression, and there are people in need. And the mansion has a lot of rooms. And so they invite people to come and stay at the mansion. Now, unbeknownst to them, Gail Storm plays the owner's daughter. And so she has come, maybe she and her mother have come to stay at the mansion during Christmas, but they don't tell anyone that they own the mansion. And they are kind of estranged from her father. Gail Storm plays Trudy, and she's estranged from her father, and her mother is estranged from her husband. Well, during the course of the movie, Aloysius, who is really this interesting character, he has all these rules. You have to keep the mansion clean. You can't, if you have money, we go buy our own food. We cook our own food, but, or we replace food if we use it. I mean, he has all these rules about how to be a good person using the mansion while the owner is away. And but he also kind of knits the people together into a kind of a family. And eventually the owner shows up, and his wife tells him, please, don't let him know that you own the mansion, because she would really like to rekindle their relationship. And the whole theme of this story is that you can have all the wealth in the world, but money doesn't make you happy. Things don't make you happy. What makes you happy are relationships, are loving other people and allowing them to love you, and taking care of other people, and caring for people that you don't even know, the poor. So it's just this really heartwarming story, especially since the millionaire learns his lesson. He learns that lesson. And at the end, he says something like, I'm going to invite him to come and spend Christmas with us next year. So that is a really fun story. The second one is The Man Who Came to Dinner. And here's the description. An acerbic critic wreaks havoc when a hip injury forces him to move into a Midwestern family's home. It's based on a Broadway play by George S. Kaufman and Moss Hart, and it is based on an actual critic named Alexander Woolcroft. And Alexander knew Moss Hart and George S. Kaufman, and he asked them to write a play for him to be in. Well, they couldn't come up with an idea. They didn't know what to write for him. And then at one point, while they were trying to come up with an idea, Woolcroft went to visit Moss Hart, and he just took over the whole house. He ensconced himself into Moss Hart's bedroom. He ordered his staff around. He ordered meals, his favorite meals to be cooked. I mean, it was just this like nightmare kind of a person to come visit you. And so Moss Hart was talking to Kaufman about this, and he said it would have been really worse if he had broken his leg and had to stay for a long time. And they looked at each other and they knew they had a play. So the movie is based on the play. The actors are Monty Woolley plays Sheridan Whiteside. He's the critic. Betty Davis plays Maggie Cutler, and Ann Sheridan plays Lorraine Sheldon. And both Betty Davis and Ann Sheridan and some of the other characters are based on real people as well. People who were part of the Inner Creative Circle. I think they were called the Algonquin Group or something like that. But the play has this, there's a dark side to it, because yes, he takes over the house and he's giving advice to the young people who are living in the house, and they are trying to defy their parents. And so he's wreaking havoc among the relationships of the family and of the staff. And so there isn't really a oh, this is Christmas and everybody's happy at the end. No, it doesn't really quite end that way, but it is really hilarious. And there is one redeeming thing about the relationships. Betty Davis's character Maggie is Sheridan Whiteside's secretary. She falls in love and she kind of gives Whiteside the what for and tells him what a horrible person he is and how he treats everybody so badly. So in a way, that part is really satisfying, but it ends on a funny note where, spoiler alert, he slips and falls again on the steps of this family's home, and it's like, oh no, we're going to go through this whole thing again. So it's funny and fun, and sometimes you just need funny because sometimes the Christmas season is stressful, and so it's good to sit down and have a feel good fun movie to watch. The third movie, Remember the Night, here's the description for that. Love blooms between a sympathetic attorney and the comely shoplifter he has taken home for the Christmas holiday. And it stars Barbara Stanwyck as Lee Leander, Fred McMurray as John Sargent, and Beulah Bondi as his mother, as John Sargent's mother. And it's a really wonderful story because Lee has been caught shoplifting. That's the very first thing that happens in the movie. And Fred McMurray's character is known for being a very straightforward, never take any prisoners kind of a prosecutor. He usually wins. He usually wins his cases. And so that's why they choose him. But he's also quite good at not being too hard-nosed with women who are being put on trial. But it's Christmas, and he kind of has this, I wouldn't call it a soft spot necessarily, but he doesn't want her to have to spend Christmas in jail. So he puts up the bail for her, and then he's gonna let her go home. He's going to take her to her home. Well, in the process, because he is from Indiana, this takes place in New York City. In the process of taking her home to Indiana, he finds out that her mother is really horrible, a hateful woman. And so he ends up taking her home with him because he can't let her out of sight. I mean, he's put up all this bail money for her, and he will lose that if she escapes. In the process, of course, they fall in love with each other. And spoiler alert again, the ending is quite surprising because he wants to kind of throw the case and make it so that she gets off, but she's not having any of that. And so it has a redeeming quality at the end. She says something like, well, I did something wrong, and you're supposed to pay when you do something wrong. You're supposed to pay for breaking the law. And so it's just a really great movie. You can that one is fairly easy to get, I think. You can watch that on maybe even some local channels. And again, that one might be also available at the library. So those are my 3 Christmas picks for you. I hope you will go check out Turner Classic Movies, tcm.com, and go look at their list of movies that they are going to play on their Christmas movie marathon for December 20th through the 25th. They have a lot of movies there. And if you are somebody who just doesn't really like Hallmark movies, but you want to watch some Christmas movies, they have a lot of really great ones that they're going to be showing. So welcome to Story Power 116. This is the last one of 2024. And it's a special one because it's also an introduction to a new YouTube channel that my sister Celeste and I are going to be doing in 2025 called Classic Cinema with the Sage Sisters. My name is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden, and I am the oldest sister.
I am Celeste Sage Tate. I am the youngest of 4. One brother, though.
And yes, and we are 13 years apart, but we both love classic movies. And one of the reasons why I wanted to start this channel is because sometimes classic movies show us where we've been, but they also show us that maybe things haven't changed so much. And so, do you want to talk a little bit about our family and what?
Well, yeah. Lucinda and I were raised on movies.
Yeah.
For our parents, you know, they were born in the 30s, so it was the cheapest form of entertainment that they could get to. And they taught us to see pictures and film in a different way than I think most parents would have done. They taught us that there were lessons in them, life lessons, and the discussions that we had around them were life skill lessons. So I feel like that's how I view film. And I think you do too.
Yep.
And that's what we always talk about.
Yeah.
Every time.
Every time
And
we're together.
every
watching movies.
time we talk about movies. And I'm even teaching my own children what film has to offer for growth, emotional and spiritual, emotional intelligence.
Yep. And also, there are other things like how to be a human being, how to think critically, how to look ahead at your choices and what are the possible consequences, things like that. So those are the kinds of things we learn from our parents. And it seems to me that that's kind of what we need right now. And I've been thinking about this for quite some time, that, you know, it's great to have all of the science, technology, engineering, and math courses being taught in school, but the arts and humanities teach us how to be human beings and how to get along with each other. And so movies are one of those pathways. It's not the only way that you can learn all of the things that we're talking about. So what we are going to do is take one movie each episode and analyze it. And the first one is
Love with the Proper Stranger.
So we hope to have that one out pretty quickly after the new year.
Yes.
And then we have a long list of movies to talk about. So that are really relevant for today. So I hope that you enjoy our new channel. We'll let you know where to go to subscribe to it, and hopefully we'll have a conversation.
And hopefully you'll tune in.
Yeah, really.
We're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, we are. Because we could talk forever about
Yes,
movies.
we could.
Yes, we could. In fact, we did the other day.
Even on just one movie.
That's right. Exactly. So thanks for listening. Have a happy new year, a happy Christmas, happy New Year, happy Hanukkah, happy any kind of holiday that you're having now. And we'll see you in 2025. Bye. Bye. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you like what you heard, please share it with a friend and give us a rating and/or review on your favorite podcast app. It will help people find us. I invite you to join my Patreon community at patreon.com/storypower, all one word. Or if you like, you can subscribe to Story Power on Apple Podcasts. It's my aim to build a community where we discuss the stories we love and talk about what we learned from them. I offer extra audio content and story suggestions to my patrons on both platforms. Remember, as Philip Pullman said, after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in the world. Let's spread the story love. Until next time, this is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden. Thanks for listening.